Today we're going to be covering a crucial key, or what most people would deem an X factor, a deciding factor, important factor, whatever you want to call it. We call it a crucial key here. That crucial key is Errol Spence's outside game. In other words, how does he fight at long distance? And so one thing to note before we get in here is why I'm describing all this. So Errol is different from normal pressure fighters in the sense that his constant forward rhythm is broken by backwards jumps or shuffles in response to attacks early on. And he has several different safety methods that he uses to safely establish an offense that he can then build on top of from the outside. And we're going to go over 3 foundational aspects. And in particularly in the Ugas fight, we're going to cover kind of an extra fourth that he had to use against Ugas. So the first foundational block is threatening the level change. And what I mean by level change is when he's coming forward, this little duck right here, where his eye level lowers below the head level of his opponent. And basically that allows the setup for the jab to the body and other attacks to the body. And then once he starts landing attacks to the body, he can level change and go up top. So that allows for diversification of offense. And I'll show a few examples of that.
That's true, but you know, if you're Errol Spence, you need these rounds. I mean, some different angles and.
The threat of the level change is a feint for the body attack. A feint disguises the actual body attacks, so then he can mix in, make the opponent start reacting and guessing, and so he can start landing his body shots, particularly the jab to the body. Once the jab to the body is established, then he can start establishing his jab up top, and then the jab up top is established, and then the offense starts building on top of that. Another important aspect of building a safe foundation for his offense from the outside is how he reacts to offense from his opponent. That jump back right there, instead of standing in front of them, he gives himself space so he can start dictating the terms by which the fight is fought. And then the third piece of the foundation kind of works in tandem with the first. So he threatens the level change, but he also feints an entry, meaning that a lot of times he steps in behind his jab. So it's not just a jab where he's standing there, he steps into it. And so by threatening to step in with his foot and with his upper body, it's different aspects of the feint. He can disguise his entry that way and not constantly just come in without any setups. Since these feints are oftentimes pretty subtle, I'll slow it down in slow motion. And here he's even using the probe, which I'm going to mention later. And so that's not a real committed attack. See how easily he pulls back, because that attack was never meant to happen in the first place. It was more of a test, a feint to see the reaction. And once he gets the reaction, he gets back, right? So he's not actually trying to initiate offense. And then there goes the jump back on top of that.
This is the best that he has seen Spence in. So much on the line here.
And then we'll look at the Garcia fight and see how aspects of the foundational building translates directly into offensive attacks. So the level change threat, when he level changes, he waits and then he goes to the body. So it opens up the jab to the body. It starts opening up offense. The foundation is working. Level change, then jab to the body. And then a note about the Ugas fight, that start is way more aggressive. They're throwing a lot more committed punches early on in the first round. And so he doesn't get to establish that slow building block process that he normally does in his fights. But that's not to say that he's a slow starter. He always puts on a lot of pressure. But that doesn't mean that his output is super high. His output goes up as the fight continues because the foundation is strong. Then he's building on top of what he's already built, and it's a constant building process. That's why he goes up and up as the fight continues. So since I showed him building on top of the foundation of the level change, I'll show him building on top of the foundation of the entry feint. So here, he's going to feint to step in. Ugas is going to react. He's going to pull his head back like that. And then once he reacts like that, he's hesitating. And he's hesitating, guessing opportunities to step in and actually land real offense. So he gets the feint, gets the reaction, and then he does the real thing. And then on top of that, obviously, since they're all 3 interconnected pieces, the foundational aspects all build off of each other and help each other in the sense of providing for that overall goal of I want to safely but effectively and efficiently get into my opponent's range, box on the outside and land shots and start diversifying my shots. And so here's the way he diversifies the shots. So once the building blocks are there, or once the foundational building blocks are there, then he can start building up a diverse offense. And so here he starts mixing in bigger shots. He starts mixing in the left hand and things like that.
Garcia able to block that. That could be significant in this fight. There's Garcia able to land with a jab to the body.
Does it mean that Spence can't, put some real...
That the judges are watching that, and Spence a step sharper here in this fight against Goose. Warning from.
And so here's a good example of him using all three foundational blocks for the established overarching goal of getting on the inside, which is ultimately what he wants to do, because on the inside is where he's going to do the most damage. Some fights he'll stay on the outside for longer, but generally most of his damage is going to be on the inside. And so pay attention to how he inches closer. Pay attention to their feet distance and how he inches closer using all the foundational blocks.
That left hand to the body.
And then he jumps back once he feels like there's a threat. So it's safety. It's getting in range, doing what you need to do, but doing it safely. One of the things I talk about all the time in his offense is the 1-1-2 or 1-1-4, 1-1-6, 1-1 backhand, meaning he throws the lead hand out twice and then throws the backhand out. But the thing is, it's too predictable and his opponents often can find the timing pretty easy. After the double jab is thrown, they expect the backhand and they can usually attempt to counter it.
40 to 50% in that fight.
And so there's a few issues with his 1-1 backhand combination. But one of the main ones is that, other than this repetitiveness and consistency, is that the consistent rhythm and predictability of what punch is coming when. And so when you know when the punch is coming, you can time the punch. And so this is a perfect example of how he can mix in different rhythm breaks or delays to better protect himself while throwing this combination. So here he throws the 1, he delays and then throws the 2. But then immediately after, he throws the 1-1-2 around the same rhythm that he was throwing it before. Counter backhand comes through. Whether it lands or not isn't necessarily the point. It's about the probability of damage being done. And then a few seconds later, he changes up the rhythm and speed of the combination. Notice how he doesn't get a counter response because the rhythm was different. It wasn't as predictable. And so I mentioned the 3 at the beginning, but I also said there's kind of a 4th one. This is what I mean by kind of the 4th one. There's a lot more examples, but those little small taps and probes before it, that's kind of the 4th one I'm talking about. So that one sets up his jab. And so he mixed in a real jab with the probes. And so that's one of the foundational blocks as well. And he kind of did that with Garcia, but he was forced to do that with Ugas because Ugas came forward with a lot more offense. And so he needed more punch traffic. He needed to slow down the pace to where he could start building at his pace. So just because you're a pressure fighter doesn't mean that you can't slow down the pace and start so that you can start the game how you, not the game, but the fight how you want to start the fight.
Look at the truth go. Looking to step right to the 35-year-old Cuban.
And so, yeah, that probe set up a little bit of a stiff jab, a little bit of a stiff pushing jab, and then an uppercut up the middle. And so the probe is setting up offense, but it's also serving as defense in the sense that it's a blinder and it's punch traffic. It's in the way of any punches that are going to come down the middle of that center line. And so, yeah, these were just some of the foundational aspects of Spence when it comes to building his outside boxing game. And so next we'll go on to Crawford and his inside game. That's going to be another crucial key. And then we'll move on to something else, probably southpaws. Immortality Serum out.
How can I die if I'm immortal? Monster in my eyes, I'm immoral. I ain't got no time to be cordial. Ripping up shit, I'm making big decisions. I'm feeling fly and important.